Loneliness was another part of this film. Like, all of our characters seem to live lonely lives, and that is a thread for a lot of people that just live in big cities across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Again, though, I feel like the movie didn't really linger in that properly.
Mm-hmm.
The heartbreak of that, I didn't properly feel it. And again, I really think it's because the lead performance is so bad. For me to really be feeling true sympathy for these characters that are having a very lonely lived experience. This woman is chasing upwards economic mobility at the expense of her dreams, her younger love, her this, her that. It is a lonely endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
But because I don't care about her character, I don't believe her character, I don't feel that much about the loneliness that they're depicting to me.
I think this is partially a writing issue as well. I do. I don't think it's fair to just blame Dakota Johnson because one, as you've already mentioned, we realize that she doesn't. At least the script doesn't tell us anything about who she is outside of her career and outside of her dating life. And unfortunately, I do think that's not necessarily uncommon in big cities like in New York or even in London, right? Unfortunately. But I think the fact that she calls on John to house her, and of course he can't do it, and she can't call on anyone else, there should have been something in there. She should have said something about, oh, you're the only person I can call on or something.
I started thinking about past lives when we got to that. I was like, oh, so she doesn't have any friends or family? In the course of this movie, 4 major life things have happened to her. She has, she got a milestone at work with her 7th or 9th wedding. She started dating a very, attractive, wealthy new man. She went through a breakup. She went through a traumatic experience at work. At none of these points does she engage with anybody in her life about any of these experiences. And I'm like, but that's not real life though. I was saying this to my friend who I watched this with, that a lot of media we consume overrepresents people who have zero community whatsoever. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but they're overrepresented as protagonists in films and TV. Because I'm like, in real life, the average person has someone. They have a brother, they have a sister, they have a cousin, they have a childhood best friend, they have a neighbor, they have an aunt, they have a school friend. They have something. Like, the average person doesn't go through that many profound life experiences and never talk about it with anybody. And it goes back to this thing that you and I talk about the centering of romance in our society at the expense of community. Someone in this movie says something along the lines of, oh, the reason people get married is so they don't die alone. And I was like, you're going to die. A lot of people die alone whether they're married or not. The people that die surrounded by people are people that invested in community when they were younger.
Yeah.
Lots of men are married and they die in solitude with their children and their partners not caring about them. Why does nothing ever reflect this in mainstream media?
But this is the reason why I have questions about Celine's song, and I know this is going to sound really personal. Given the way how she clearly over-romanticizes romance itself, clearly, including in that interview, it makes me question if whether this was Celine's song in New York. That whether she was so focused on her career and dating that she didn't make time for community. Because there's no way that this could be written by someone who has community around them. It just doesn't make sense.
In past lives, she didn't have community either. So probably yes. And there is something to be said about the immigrant experience with that. Right? But here's the thing. Dakota Johnson's character is not an immigrant. And this is what I'm saying about how the characters don't feel like real people to me. Their backstory doesn't hold up. What kind of white girl who moves to New York City and gets a big job, her parents never call her to check in with her about how that's going? Nothing. Unless she has a very vitriolic relationship with them. How does that never happen? She came close to marrying this man and that didn't come up with any siblings, nothing.
Because what Celine's song is trying to tell us is that love can conquer all. Again, if you're older than 18, I expect you to know better than that now. In fact, this is my biggest gripe of the movie, actually. At no point did Lucy consider simply staying single. It's almost as if it wasn't even a possibility. She felt like by force she had to pick one of these men. But if you live in a romance-centered society, of course you're going to feel that way. Because the worst thing you can do is be single and therefore die alone, even though, as we've just addressed, many married people with kids die alone. Okay? So again, it's like the idea of romance being so centered in one's life, it's just the crux of this movie.
The whole love conquers all thing, I can be convinced of it in film. Arguably my favorite film of all time, Interstellar. That is the ultimate climax of the movie. The love will persist beyond time and space, and it works across the laws of physics. And it works for me because the film's emotional weight is enough to justify it to me. So I'm not actually against a film convincing me of that. And like I said, when her character says that you're the only thing that even confirms to me that I'm even capable of love, I do think there is something quite interesting and beautiful about that. So I'm more open to, if you want to do a whole love conquers all despite money, despite this, despite that, okay, convince me. But they didn't.
They didn't. Yeah. I personally believe that if you're a true romantic, you should be pushing towards a society that deprioritizes the romantic relationship. Ooh. And the reason why is because in our current society, we put so much pressure on the romantic partner. That means that your romantic partner is supposed to automatically be your number one co-resident, your number one co-parent, co-investor, everything. They're supposed to meet all of those criteria. But as this movie is trying to unpack poorly, in my opinion, it doesn't actually, or at least if you have that setup, it necessarily means that your romantic choice becomes a business decision. It necessarily means that your romantic choice becomes a familial decision, regardless of whether you include other people in it or not. I think if you're a true romantic and you want to convince me that true love conquers all, you've got two routes to do it for me. It's either you deprioritize the romantic partner so that they're no longer the automatic, co-resident, all of that stuff. They are just your romantic partner. That means they are the person or one of the people potentially that you go to for romantic endeavors. Or you fully go down the polygamous route, which is what I thought Celine Song was going to do. Because her and her husband, they have a tendency to write about these sorts of things.
Celine and Justin Kurtzky's her husband, who is a writer of Challengers, they just keep on dancing around this thing, and I won't give them their tens until they finally just dive.
Just come out with it.
Yeah, just go there, please. Because instead, we're playing all these silly games like what this movie was doing.